Good evening, friends. Welcome to the front. We are the Pillars of Liberty, and this is the POLCAST.
Welcome.
My name's Mike, otherwise known as the Glider, and I'm accompanied, as always, by my smoking hot wife, Smooch. You want to say that, Smooch?
Hello.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. It's almost 10:30 here on the Central. We wanted to try to get this thing out, seeing as how it is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And we were trying to get it out a little earlier. We even had some friends come over to watch our little ones so we could attempt to do that. But there's always something that comes up, which is fine. We had a good meal, hung out with some friends for a little bit.
Right.
I've got tremendous heartburn right now, but I'm able to keep most of that battery acid down.
That's good.
And it is the night cap, and it is Saturday, so that means American meals all around. So we want to raise our cups to all those that fell on this day 20 years ago, and also to all their families and all the people that died afterwards as a result of what happened that day, because we have to remember, a lot of folks just watching over the course of this last week video of people running from those buildings covered in pulverized concrete and rock.
Yeah.
We just, our hearts go out to those folks, their families, and may God watch over us all.
Amen.
So, like most of our shows, and actually first, there's two things that I'd like to touch on, and we got to kind of cover in our email, which is fine for today. It is restorethepillars@protonmail.com for anybody who's tuning in for the first time. But we got a little counter there in the corner of Americans that are still stranded in Afghanistan.
Yep. And
we'll keep that up,
We did it, Joe. We did it.
Come on, man. It's too soon. So we'll keep that number up there, and we'll try to update. We do have one update from our previous show that we did in regards to the Hellfire missile that struck a family and killed quite a few civilians. Not one ISIS member, and I think that's exactly what we said, because we were already out of we were gone. We were all, our forces were all converged on the airport trying to secure the gates.
Right.
So we didn't have any people floating around doing intel and birds up in the sky. Yeah, that'll only get you so much. Oh, it's a white car. That sounds like lazy. That
sounds like half of, if anybody's
surveillance.
been to Afghanistan, they know the amount of white Corollas.
Oh, it's a white Hilux. Yeah, that's what it was. No, I'm saying not that car.
Right, but just like in general, it's like there's so many white Corollas.
Yeah.
It's like, so you just followed this one and you decided that, okay, this is the time to shoot.
Well, a rocket attack that happened later, I guess, was a white Corolla. But
yeah, sure. I'm not doubting that.
But you could tell. You look at that Corolla, and birds that they got up in the sky, you can see a dime on the floor. So you mean to tell me you couldn't see, you picked out this car, and then they were like, well, it was actually this car, so
right.
My bad. That car had rocket tubes sticking out of it. There's a big difference between a normal four-door sedan and one that has rockets sticking out of it.
But, the funny thing is General Milley came out and said...
Milquetoast Millie?
Yeah.
I'll do whatever you say.
He came out and said that it was an absolute, for sure target, and yet they didn't kill any ISIS members. They just killed 9 civilians.
Yeah, that guy speaks out of both sides of his mouth.
Can we get a round of applause for General Milley, please?
How about, because unfortunately... No, I don't want to do that one. We'll just do an applause for General. I was going to do the kids cheer, but General Milley, may you retire soon.
Amen to that.
So we've got some slides that we put together for you tonight, and as usual, we like to know, well, where are we going with this? And I know it's 20 years past the date, and we kind of are living in the result of the Patriot Act, overreach by the government, and control. It just comes down to control.
What a nightmare. I mean, it's been like we've been living in the Twilight Zone for the last 20 years.
And it's speeding up. It's speeding up. And the slow drip has turned into a fire hydrant.
Right.
So, with what took place on September 11th, we want to kind of go back to where it started. How did that start? What brought upon the events of 9/11? So we put some slides together for you all this evening, and we're not going to do a complete breakdown of the events that took place on that day as far as the flight paths, things like that, because most people are already familiar with that.
Right.
We do have a slide that we want to show you that shows that exactly the flight paths, but we're not going to go too deep into it, and I'll bring that one up right now. And I just kind of want to show you. These are generalized. They're not correct flight paths of each individual plane. All these planes were actually headed out to the west course before they were taken over, obviously, and mayhem ensued. And I was wondering, Smooch, if you could maybe just take us back 20 years and
Sure.
tell us a little bit about your experience.
Sure. Just to give you guys a little quick background, at the time I had never been to Afghanistan. Everything I knew was basically, home here in the States. I was in 8th grade. I had just got to school and, we're settling down at school, ate breakfast. And our teacher got a call and she's like, go ahead, you guys, go outside. And my teacher, she would always have the TV on the morning news, of course, and we would talk about current events. So we came back from our 5-minute break. Here my teacher is crying. Some of the students had already been in the classroom, and immediately one of the girls turns around and looks at me and says, your uncles bombed the Twin Towers. And for a moment there, I wasn't comprehending what she was saying. Mm-hmm. It was just, what? And I said, what? She goes, your uncles are bombing the Twin Towers. And it shocked me because I'm like, I'm a kid here, so I was like, my uncles? Well, my teacher was crying because her son-in-law was in one of the towers, and her daughter was on the phone with her, and she spoke with her son-in-law. And we were trying to console her teacher, and immediately I wanted to reach out to my mom because I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. I reached out to my mom, and I said, Mom, the kids here are saying that our uncles bombed the Twin Towers in New York. And she goes, no, honey, no, just, I'm going to come and pick you up from school early. I said, no, Mom, everything's okay. Are you okay? And she said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just going to come and pick you up from school early. Well, Mom didn't get there soon enough because, I ended up getting jumped by a few girls that day. So that's just the kind of the main highlights that I remember from that day. And, everybody was crying, and I was confused.
I think we were all, everybody, it was it was mass confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I was on the north side of Milwaukee doing a 3-layer tear off on a 812 pitch. It was like an 8 or a 912 pitch, steep roof, 3-story, like that. I don't know if you can see that, but it was steep, whatever. And I just got out of the Marines, and literally, what was it, 6 months before that I got out of the Marines. And the one thing that two things. The one thing I thought right off the bat, I was like, we're going to war. We were just attacked. We're I don't know who, when, how, but we're going to war. The other thing I saw, I freaked out because all of a sudden, and I'm sure a lot of you remember this. I'm a little older than my wife, which I'm very thankful for. I remember hearing something on the radio, and they were like, "You got to go gas now. We don't know if there'll be any more gas. Stay tuned for rock and roll." And I immediately got in my truck and went down the street to Speedway or Super America, whatever it was at the time. And the cars were wrapped around the block.
Really?
People worried about not being able to get gas.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, "Oh, it's the Arabs." And I thought the same thing. You know, I'm like,
Right.
I don't know any difference between, you know, Afghans, Arabs at this time.
Right.
And,
Totally understandable. I mean, I didn't either.
And I guess there was one other thing. And I really thought it was really cool to see. Were all the American flags on people's vehicles.
Yeah.
Everywhere you went. Some people, you know, 2, 3. Anywhere they could put a flag, they would put it there. And it was for people like us that are down here, not the elites that, you know, up on top. We're like, yeah, right on.
Right.
We people coming together. It didn't matter, you know, what your pigmentation was or anything like that, or what gender you were. People came together, not just in America, around the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just, with all the research that we've done over the last week into this, I feel like there were some other people going, yeah, right, because we got them. Fish hook in the mouth. We got them.
Yep.
We can push anything we want. We can become a super surveillance state that will keep a tab on every single individual every day of their life.
For the rest of their lives.
That's why we have those big data farming or harvesting farms
And
out
we'll
in
use
Utah
their,
and stuff.
We'll use their information after they're dead for voting.
Yeah. Hey, not a bad idea. Better write that down. Maybe we could sell that to some Democratic think tank or something. So, obviously, horrific scenes, whether it be people jumping out of a building because they don't want to burn to death. Also with just the loss of life at the Pentagon, you know, almost 1,000 or 3,000 people just that day.
Right.
It was horrible. Worst attack in U.S. history. So where did it start? Well, kind of starts with Al Qaeda, I think.
Right.
That's the going theory for most people. It was that Bin Laden. It was Bin Laden. So I'm not going to read through all the sections at the bottom. I'm going to highlight some of them because if we did that, we've got several other slides in it. It might go longer than what we anticipated. But I do want to touch on several things. First thing, sometime around, general consensus and the intel community assumes that Bin Laden formed Al Qaeda in 1988. They're not very specific on where. I've seen Pakistan, I've seen Sudan, I've seen Afghanistan.
Yes.
In my opinion, through what I've searched, it almost seems that they try to shy away and kind of push that towards Pakistan, which is weird because even Pakistan, with their ISI and the tight connection that the CIA, and you can kind of see that on the slide, that they have with ISI, CIA, Mossad, Taliban, and they're subdued way in the back,
Right.
because they weren't really around that, is ISIS. You would think that with Operation Cyclone still going on, they might have a little more intel as far as if that's in Afghanistan, you know, because the CIA was still there. Fast forward to 89, Operation Cyclone essentially ends, as far as we know it, or what you see on the History Channel, what they'll tell you. Then we go to 96, and we've kind of touched on some of these things already. It's a continuing theme, if you haven't noticed. Taliban take control of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Guardian goes into the mountains of Tora Bora and does an interview with bin Laden hiding out up there in the caves. You can see a picture of him right there.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, in 98, we had the 2 embassy bombings, one in Kenya, one in Tanzania, both claimed by Al-Qaeda. U.S. intel collects info indicating bin Laden wants to attack major U.S. targets, and we're talking about sensitive sites like the Pentagon, the White House, but it's very vague. This is 98 as well. And in September of 99, the Library of Congress, which I didn't know this at first, but they do a lot of research for the executive branch and also Congress, other investigating bodies if there's a House investigation into misconduct or something like that. Library of Congress is used a lot of times, and they have to pay those folks that work there to do the actual digging, because it's a lot. And what they said essentially is that Al-Qaeda poses the most serious threat to the United States. It's interesting how you see that just 20 years ago, but now with the resurgence of Al-Qaeda, I would think they would kind of be on the top again, but it's not. It's people of a certain pigmentation. Now, we live in the South, and I still have yet to see skinheads walking around here. Not that I'm looking for them or like, hey, where's the club?
Right.
But you go back 20 years, and it's Al-Qaeda, and all the things that led up to this, you have to remember one thing. Al-Qaeda was trained essentially by the CIA, and what we like to call in the SF community, train the trainer. And that's how the dominoes fall. They teach them these skill sets, then they go teach somebody else these skill sets. And unfortunately, when you do that, you teach bad people those skill sets too.
Yep.
And then it metastasizes into this nasty, evil connection that we have going on in the world right now. There was a study in 2014 by the RAND Institute that says that in 1988, when Al-Qaeda was founded, there were roughly only 3 of these really extreme type of terrorist groups.
Right.
I'm sure there were more, but I'm just going to go off of this study. You fast forward to 2001, they said about 22. And when the study came out in 2014, it was essentially 49. So if you do the math, we could be looking at anywhere between 58, 60 groups in the world now. Are we a safer place? No. Not at all.
No.
It seems like they're just increasing membership, if anything. So then, moving forward, we had obviously in Aden Harbor in October 12th of 2000, we had the USS Cole bombing, which killed 17 individuals, 17 service members. I don't know if they were all service members. I can't remember, although that is something I should know. So I'll do push-ups and I'll thrash myself later. And then closing out the decade, we get to May of 2001, just a couple months before 9/11. And what happened then? We touched on it in the last show. Actually, it was the show before, I think, about the Taliban and how they developed. And it essentially, when the Taliban's PR started going to crap because they're beheading women and stuff in arenas and doing other evil things, they're an evil organization. That's what they're going to do. The Bush administration decided to give them $43 million to help curtail and stop the flow of opium, which did absolutely zero. It only increased from 4.6 metric tons in 1996 all the way up to 9 metric tons in the year 2001. So it really did absolutely nothing. One other thing I'm going to touch on in this slide, if you haven't seen it, you can see 3 of the turd hijackers right there. And that was a home that they would frequent and also do planning, meeting.
Right.
They use that as their essentially just their bed down spot for whenever they were doing flight training and things like that. Well, the individual that owns the house, and I'm going to screw up his name, Esham Ghazawi, good enough, was a prominent Saudi businessman with ties to the royal family. That's interesting because And the next slides, next couple slides, you're going to see there's some other ties to the Saudi royal family, and I'm sure some of you are already aware of the Bush family and their ties to the Saudi family.
Right.
So that takes us up to, well, actually, we're still in May, and that's when Coffer Black, the chief of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, told Politico that we are going to be struck. We are going to be struck very hard. We are going to lose a lot of people. And that is exactly what he said. You can see going along, another interesting key point is July 10th, where FBI agent Kenneth Williams writes a memo on Middle Eastern men attending flight schools in Phoenix speculating Al-Qaeda. Now, could he have been profiling? Yes, but I hate to tell folks this. In law enforcement, if you have a known threat out there, you profile. You go, okay, we're looking for these kind of people. You're not going to look, we're looking for these 4 white guys, all bald, wearing black jackets with boots and their jeans tucked in. Let's go over to the Asian community and start there. You're not going to do that. So I would assume, I've never been in the FBI, that they were using the skills that they learned, the training that they had, and they applied that to their everyday job, which is an FBI agent. In July, CI Director George Tenet briefs officials, including National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, about this threat. She does nothing. August 6th, and some of you may have already be aware of this, the president receives a memo. Bin Laden determined to strike the United States. So they have accumulated already, they've already had 2 embassy bombings. USS Cole was attacked. That is an act of war, attacking a military ship like that. Mm-hmm. It's all an act of war, really, but the arrogance to do that against a warship like that, they weren't playing around. I would at this point take this threat very seriously.
Right.
Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know who was conducting the surveillance, who was on the street to observe these people, because we did know about them coming into the United States. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that one can't. It's on the next slide. We'll get to that one here in a second. But moving up, you have Bush's security advisors approve a draft where they're talking about arming, essentially, any of Al-Qaeda's enemies to the tune of about $200 million. That's a large, large chunk of change. And then we get to September 11th, and we were attacked. Now, a couple interesting things that I found out in my research, especially when, this all they all point back their fingers to bin Laden.
Right.
And him creating Al-Qaeda. Mm-hmm. And his connection to all of this. The interesting thing that I found out is that President Bush already had a relationship with the bin Laden family, along with the Saudi family, through a gentleman by the name of James R. Bath, who happened to be also a pilot in GW's National Guard Air Unit. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you can see it there, that's from the Free Press by Rob Fittrix back in April of 2004. And he kind of played the middleman between the two. And what that relationship entailed, I wasn't able to get that deep, but they did have a working relationship. Not Osama bin Laden, but his brother. And that goes all the way back to the 70s. The one thing I will read is a snippet from Salon by Craig Unger. This is April 28th, 2004. I interviewed Bath for my recent published book, House of Bush, House of Saudi. I discovered that the White House may not want to reveal his name because Bath, a Houston businessman who became friends with George W. Bush in the 70s, is the middleman in a story Bush doesn't particularly want told. The saga of how the richest family in the world, the House of Saudi, and its surrogates courted the Bush family. Bath was present at the birth of a relationship that would bring more than $1.4 billion in investments and contracts from the House of Saudi to the House of Bush over more than 20 years. And some of this stuff has already been brought to light. Obviously, these are news clippings of those things taking place, and a lot of stuff that it's in the next slide. So I'll touch on what's on here first. Did you want to say something, Smooch?
No, you're fine.
Oh, one of the other interesting things that I found was a lot of snippets about Larry Silverstein, a lot of memes, and looking into him and what he did just 6 weeks before.
He looks like a very grimy person. Just looking at him and him smirking and smiling in that picture. Well,
I'd probably be smirking too if I conned, my way into 4.5 billion. He insured the World Trade Center, Building 7 in particular, and go ahead.
And Building 7's actually where the CIA and the Secret Service had an office on the 25th floor. So that's very interesting.
Well, not only that, but a lot of other records were kept in these buildings. There was a vast,
there was art.
Storage area. Yep.
There was, I believe, they were saying
maybe
that
$500 million worth of gold.
There was negatives, 40,000 negative pictures, the negatives, photographs from Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, and there was CIA documents. There was 21 libraries, multiple federal
businesses and also
over
federal
430 offices. Yeah.
And I put that snippet in there because I thought that was interesting. That the space that they were referring to, especially this Captain Tom DePricio from the New York Police Department, a little in the same article where he states that it looked like something out of a James Bond movie. He said that the area down there must have been about 16 acres in size, and there was everything from vehicles, limos, police cars, weapons, drugs. It was used as a storage facility for the DEA. Evidence, but a lot of record keeping was kept there as well. Which brings us to World Trade Center 7, building number 7. Now, that building was never hit by a plane. I get that there was debris that did hit it when 1 and 2 came down. But the way that the building came down made a lot of people speculate that seemed like kind of like a controlled demolition.
Yeah, I mean, just the way that the building collapses, it's collapsing inward,
Well, but like a building that size, they usually bring it straight down.
Yeah, if you're doing demo.
Yeah.
Sure, but if it's a structure fire, a building that, yeah, it's going to burn for a while.
Well, they said that's what brought it down, the fire. But he had also mentioned in a PBS interview, and that's actually what he said there from that interview, that he told the fire department to pull it. And by pull it, that's a term used in controlled demolitions. And it might have just been a Freudian slip. Maybe he was referring to something else. But the way that building came down, it looked like it was controlled.
Yeah.
So this is from a website and a group of architects and engineers for truth, essentially, for 9/11. And they put several things together on some of the things that didn't make sense. One thing that that kind of struck out to me is, watching video over the last week, you do see how the buildings both all three buildings come down the same way, but for different reasons. And we were listening the other night to a radio show, and they were playing old interview records of news anchors and things like that. One of them was George Stephanopoulos. I don't know if you remember that one, Smooch.
Yeah.
And he actually said that he was in the subway when the first plane hit, and he said you heard this loud, just like boom, and within a matter of minutes, the entire subway started filling up with smoke, which has brought a lot of scrutiny because, you know, these planes hit up by, I believe, like the 77th floor. So how in just a couple of minutes did smoke get all the way to, you know, below ground level? And that's something that there was a couple other news anchors that reported that. Some people, also firefighters and cops that were on the ground had mentioned that they heard loud booms. You know, this is after the impact. And then also flashes of light on the ground level. So that kind of puts it into, you know, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm not a demolition expert. We were going to have a friend of the family come in, but he ate too much pizza. He was a demo guy, and he was going to tell us a little bit about thermite, but he ended up eating too much and then passing out.
He ate too much pizza and then fell asleep.
Yes. Yeah. So, in addition to that, we have another slide. Now this one goes a little further down the rabbit hole, at least part of it.
I'm kind of interested on what was all in the World Trade Center, you know, because I had no idea that they were storing gold. I had no idea that you have one of the secret, you know, the outposts for the Secret Service there and CIA. So I'm kind of interested in what else is there, because at the time they never disclosed any of that. It was just, you know, of course, focused
it trickled down
on
after,
the victims
after a
as
couple
it
of years
should be. But,
yeah.
you know.
Well, so this portion is, like I said, this goes into what some people might think of as far as conspiracy theory. But I found it very interesting because there were other things that were mentioned by police officers stating that the ground, you know, around ground zero, it stayed hot for not weeks but months, 3 months.
Yeah, I remember hearing that in the news. And
it was essentially, and you could see the picture there right in the middle where you see bedrock melted. And I'm no rocket scientist or chemical engineer, but jet fuel doesn't melt rocks. And you can see there's a graph chart that was created that shows the towers and shows the large cavern that was created under the towers.
Yeah.
Now, I had never seen anything about this before, but I stumbled across an article from Veterans Today, and this is what it said. It said, here is what is now added to the narrative, not the official narrative, but the one based on the 2003 investigation. The following information is from the U.S. Department of Energy preliminary report on the events of September 11th, 2001. The buildings destroyed at the World Trade Center are demolished using nuclear devices brought into the United States through Teterboro Airport, according to the DOE report. Investigator statements say that there was no customs-only passport forms to be filled out by the flight crew. There was never any physical inspection of baggage on the aircraft. Able Danger investigators tracked the device through the airport and maintained surveillance of all involved until the records were seized by the orders of Michael Chertoff. For those of you that don't know who Michael Chertoff is, he is the second director of Homeland Security, and he essentially co-authored the Patriot Act. And he also looks like Nosferatu, if you've ever seen a picture of him. I should have put one in there, but I didn't. When the nuclear investigators moved to Fort Lee, There had been in place a federal multi-agency task force probe into mafia gambling operations there. It was this investigation that Mike Dick and Jeff Smith took over surveillance on Atta, who was one of the terrorists, the hijackers, on the airport nearby and on the Israeli teams. The destruction of Building 7 was the result of nuclear devices installed in 100-gallon Halon fire extinguishing tanks placed throughout the complex under a fire prevention equipment upgrade program, according to the U.S. Department of Energy report. The Teterboro Airport Security Company, as of 9/11/2001, waved through illicit cargoes of any kind. Donald Trump and the Clintons used Teterboro extensively and never had their aircraft examined or passengers subject to customs. Now, I don't know if all that's true, especially when you get into nuclear devices.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that I would show this to folks and kind of see what they thought. Additionally, I got there's a picture there that you can see of the type of fire extinguishers that they claim were used by these Israeli Mossad teams that came in.
I wouldn't say allegedly. I mean, there's multiple articles pointing out that there was involvement from the Mossad. So the term allegedly in my book.
Allegedly.
No.
I'm saying because I don't have all the facts for it. I'll be honest, looking at this, as somebody who, we've conducted surveillance, things like that, it seems very plausible.
Yeah, I mean, you have a woman saying that on that morning, from her location in her apartment, she saw 5 individuals outside of a white van recording themselves and celebrating. And she found it odd, and they were in between the ages of 22 and 27. When the police got there, because she called the cops, these individuals immediately told the police officers, "We're not your problem. We're Israelis. The Palestinians are your problem."
Palestinians are the problem.
So I just found that statement is kind of odd, is because at that time, we really didn't know what was going on.
No.
When the plane struck.
No, and I don't think we still know what's going on.
So how is it these individuals automatically, hey, we're not the bad guy? I'm not.
No, I completely agree with you.
And I'm not saying by any means. It's just, to me, from my personal experience, when somebody automatically feels that confident enough to tell you an answer like that, you got to start questioning. But more or less,
I'm not disagreeing at all. I think, especially, and there's a picture of the suspected 5 Mossad agents there towards the bottom.
Right.
And I firmly know, and I'm going to trust my gut on this. I know the CIA is into some bad stuff. I know the FBI is into bad stuff. Is it the entire organization? No, for both of them. Just like I know the Mossad is into some bad stuff. ISI is into some bad stuff. MI5, MI6, whatever it is, British Secret Service.
Right.
They're all into some bad stuff, because when you can wield power like that and get away with it, you don't fear any type of repercussions, or you feel like you're invincible. And I think that's what these people thought. And I think there is a lot more that we don't know
Right.
about this situation that we may never know. And just because somebody from the government says, well, this is what happened, if you are paying attention to the events of the last couple of weeks, you have to you have to look at yourself in the mirror and question.
Always question.
Yep, absolutely.
Everything.
Absolutely. Because, like we started the show off about that family that was killed in Afghanistan off of BS intel from a terrorist organization known as the Taliban. And that's who the U.S. was. That's why we kept referring to the Afghan government that's still alive. in the
Right.
Panjshir Valley, who is the U.S. Dropping bombs on? Because if they're getting their intel from the Taliban, it's the same people that they were helping just a month and a half ago. They're now dropping bombs on.
Right.
So who?
Twilight Zone, I'm telling you.
Well, more like the Marxist zone, the control zone. But that's it in a nutshell. We didn't want to take this super long. We wanted to make sure that we kind of showed you what we found and what we thought was interesting, and especially the when you're talking about nuclear weapons and
Right.
it's
The capacity of each explosion. I mean, I had no idea until you started doing your research. I had no idea the
cavity underneath the building. Yeah.
I mean, that blows my mind away. Just everything. And you start to pay attention to little details, because at the time that it all happened, our minds immediately go to the people. We're like, oh my God, the people, and we're trying to figure out ways to help. And all this stuff was swept, you got the Patriot Act that was passed. And there was a speech Rand Paul made back in 2011. And I thought it was phenomenal. But he was talking to the House, and he was saying that, because of this, and we're not saying that we shouldn't go after the people that caused 9/11. We should go after them, but not at the cost of every American's, privacy.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, supposed mastermind, still hasn't faced trial. Apparently, he's going to here in the next couple weeks.
But that just...
It's been 20 years.
But in the crazy thing is
Guy should be dead.
the Patriot Act was never voted on. It was never, it was just something that was bypassed everybody.
Well, they do so many times. I don't. How are you going to pass a bill and you don't even know what's in it?
Right.
And why do we allow these people to get away with that?
Per what Rand Paul was saying was, there was one copy of it floating around the house around the time of the attack, and whenever they were getting everything ready to
this is
pass
before,
the bill.
obviously, copying machines. They must have not had them back in
Right.
2001.
But I just found it so utterly shocking that we've let, and I was a lot younger, and now that I'm starting to realize, we've given up so much of our freedoms, and it's continuing to
For being comfortable.
grow and grow and grow. And now the next thing what happened to HIPAA? Here's my thing. For example, COVID.
Oh, don't worry about HIPAA no more. We got rid of that.
Right. So anybody in the medical field, we all know about HIPAA. All of a sudden, you got COVID hitting in. You got all this information out there of you have to disclose whether or not you're sick or whether or not you're healthy. I'm sorry, that's my personal health. Why should I disclose that? If it doesn't involve, if you're not my doctor and if you're not my medical provider, I shouldn't have to disclose that information to you. But yet, because of this virus, because of these events that are happening, we're giving...
Are you telling me
We're
you
giving
don't
up our
have the COVID
freedoms.
vaccine?
No, I don't. And I don't plan on getting it. Because you know why? I believe in God, and I put my faith in Him.
I believe it's your right to choose that as well.
Yes. I put my faith in God, and that's that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Smooch. Anybody asks, like, when you got the shot, that's none of your business. Unless it's a friend. But if I had to go somewhere and tell somebody about my... Heat Cat's having...
Heat Cat is...
Oh,
he had too
no.
much to drink, everybody. He needs help.
It was just schnapps. That's all it was. It was buttermilk schnapps. It's his favorite. Get it out,
Josh,
buddy.
You want me to call
We
911?
apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for Puke Cat. He smokes way too much. Way too much.
We tried to get him on that program.
We tried to get him on chewing tobacco.
Didn't
He just
work.
wouldn't take. He wouldn't take it. But But that's all. That's all we have for this evening. We hope maybe some of this information would.
We hope that it opens
make you
your
go,
eyes. Right?
That sounds weird. That's interesting.
Yeah. And it was very educational for me because there was a lot of stuff that.
For me as well. I never really looked
know
into 9/11. I was just, like I said, it made me nauseous looking at all this stuff. Like, God almighty.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We need to hold people accountable. We really do. Or this kind of stuff will just continue. If even half of what we showed tonight, and half of it is true, really, because we already know all the people involved, the hijackers, and
Right.
We know the CIA's involved. We know ISI's involved, the Mossad. That's scary, because if they can get away with stuff like this, there's nothing that they can't do to us.
They've already
we're
been
just
doing
pawns
it.
on the table.
They've already been doing it, and I pray to God that people open their eyes and start
open
to
their
realize,
hearts.
Yeah, because we're so overstimulated. And that's how they've gotten us, is they've distracted and they've kept us over-entertained to the point that we're not even realizing we're losing our freedoms.
No,
They're stripping us of our freedom. Just.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you right now, love. It is football season, so. Are you ready for some football? No, we're not watching football. We won't watch football again till.
I'm ready for my country to be the America I know again.
Yeah. I say instead of sitting around watching football on Sundays, let's get out and meet some folks.
Yeah, get out there.
Let's meet some other folks.
Go to your churches, go to your mosques, go to your temples.
Go to the place of worship that you are not affiliated with. And
Yes.
say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
My name's Gary. I want to make you really feel uncomfortable right now and talk to you about Jesus Christ. No, I'm just kidding. Although that is good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just messing.
It's good because we need to be able to get that out of the way.
Bring people together.
Come together, and that's how we're going to combat all this, is by unity.
Working out ways to come together, finding common ground, and removing the blinders.
Right.
So with that being said, we want to thank everybody again.
Yes. Thank you.
For tuning in to this broadcast for Saturday, September 11th, 2021, 20 years later. But I pray to God we get some accountability here in the future.
Yeah.
You got anything else, Smooch?
No.
Heat Cat seems to be doing all right now, so with that being said, good night, everybody.